These are 3 sneaker debates that will never be resolved. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. This week, I want to talk about debates in sneakers that have been raging on for years, if not decades, that I don't believe will ever be resolved. The reason that this comes up in the first place is because I did a video about my status in the culture and how I felt like the journey that I had taken, which had included rep sneakers, is something that disqualifies me from becoming a true quote-unquote sneakerhead. In thinking about that journey and going through all the different elements of how I got to this place in 2026, I started thinking about the confines in which we define some of these things and also realized there are other debates that we're having in the culture that just never get resolved because the answers are never going to satisfy one part of the culture versus the other. And so these are 3 of them that I think are never going to be resolved. Resell may seem really obvious as something that will never be resolved, but it's been around for so long that it's now part of the culture, but it's changed in terms of how we have viewed resell and how resell has changed the culture in general. When resell started in the way that we know it now, with the advent of GOAT and StockX, what we were seeing were people almost scalping these shoes. The commodities were going for way more than they ever had any business doing, and then during the pandemic, the scarcity of resources, prices absolutely skyrocketed. And I think when that happened, people saw resell as the death of sneaker culture and that there were many people getting into the game who were there purely to make a profit. That certainly did happen, and that had a really big impact on the culture. Now in 2026, resell has taken somewhat of a back seat because now sneakers are just not what they were. And I think that those people who got into the culture purely for the profit have now realized that there are no long-term profits to be had. And now what you have is some people who are in it for the profit, but mostly what you see is an availability of resources. There's always going to be hype shoes that are going to go for top dollar, but right now the availability is such that it feels like sneaker hype is at an all-time low. Resell has done something else as well. The high prices that were being charged for collaborations and other hype shoes have now made a lot of people feel that if it's not going to get a lot of money on the resale market, that it's not worth having. What this has done in a lot of ways has made people think that GRs are really a waste of time. And that's just not the case. Resell has definitely had an impact, but I do believe that this is a negative impact because just because a shoe gets a lot of money on the resale market does not mean that it's more worthy of your time than anything else. And I think when you look at the negative parts of resell, those are the 2 things that stick out to me. But it's not all bad with resell in my opinion. If you think about it now in 2026, resell has allowed availability to be at an all-time high, even for shoes that we did not get when they first released. Right now, you can get a lot of the aforementioned GRs for, in some cases, slightly above retail, but also below retail price. You can go back in time a year or 2, get a shoe that you had forgotten about that you really liked that you didn't get at the time. I think that is a positive that not enough people talk about when it comes to resell because many people want to focus on the negatives. And so the reason that I believe resell will always be a debate that will never resolve is because those folks who always want to focus on the negative aren't going to be able to see the positives in how things have evolved with resell and how it's no longer the way that it used to be. Maybe this one isn't as much of a debate in terms of everyday debate, but I do think it's something that we definitely grapple with in the culture, and that is collabs versus GRs. A lot of people will argue that collabs have become saturated, that right now in the culture there are far too many collaborations out there. Collaborations used to feel special. If you go all the way back to the undefeated Jordan 4, that was the first ever Jordan brand collaboration. Having re-released it last year, it got released in a sea of tons of other collaborations that happen on a yearly basis. But if you think about the rest of the year, think about how many collaborations that there are. To me, I feel like there are too many to warrant the special treatment that they seem to get. The reason that the Nigel Sylvester Brick by Brick series gets a lot of hype is because they are special. We don't see tons from Nigel. And if you think back to when collaborations truly mattered, I think back to the Union Jordan 1. To me, those were perfect. They were chef's kiss in terms of collaborations. There didn't need to be any more. And since then, they have oversaturated and almost watered down the Union brand by releasing more and more. They sell out, yes, but do they need to exist in the first place? And on the flip side of that, with all the collaborations that are out, people feel that collaborations are the only shoes that matter. We talked about that when we talked about resale, that high prices in the resale market tend to drive people to think that a shoe is worth their time on release day. Collaborations don't exist without GRs laying the foundation, laying the groundwork. If it wasn't for the Jordan 1 having a steeped history coming into that Union collaboration, that shoe doesn't hit the same way. To me, that is a really important distinction to make. And so while collaborations are wonderful, and there are a lot of really great collaborations, there are a lot of collaborations that feel as if they don't need to belong because they don't add to the culture. They just water down the entirety of this space that people feel is all about consumerism at times. But also, this is why the debate will never get resolved, because many people want to love the collaborations, they want to own them, and that's all that they want. And GRs for a lot of people are passé. They're yesterday. The last one is probably the most hotly debated one, and you see it pop up every so often a few times a year, and that is fake or replica sneakers. This one is a really tough one. In my last video, I talked about the fact that I went down that road and I really dove into that market. What replicas represent for a lot of people is a panacea to them feeling disenfranchised to the companies and resale pricing them out. 5 or 6 years ago, I could get down with that because availability was at an all-time low. Shoes were selling out, and we're talking Panda Dunks were selling out and going for $600–700 on the resale market. And so for people, they go to those markets because they feel like this is the sneaker culture that they want, being able to get and wear whatever they want. But on the flip side of that, there are people who have put in so much time, so much sweat equity into building their collections over 10, 20, 30 years. And when they see some people who wear replicas and act as if they're an OG in this space, I certainly understand why those folks don't like replica sneakers. They've been around forever, but one thing that has changed is the quality of them and the accessibility of them. Now, if you miss out on a shoe, you can almost guaranteed go to the replica market and get something that looks exactly the same for a fraction of the price. The prices of those have gone up, don't get me wrong, but they're not resale prices, and for many people, that is attractive. But I can certainly now understand the authenticity of spending a lot of time building a collection over the years, making relationships, sacrificing a lot of things. It sounds silly to say, sacrificing, what do you mean? But sacrificing time is a huge deal. As we get older, time is a commodity that we get less and less of. We don't know how much we get. And so for collectors who have been around for a long time, OGs in this game who go out and collect shoes and have done so much work into learning the history, making these relationships like I talked about, that matters to them. And it's okay that it matters to them. It should matter to them. It should matter to them that they have some semblance of clout in a community that values that sort of thing. It's okay that everybody is different. Replica sneakers, fakes, whatever you want to call them, will never, ever, ever be resolved. They will always be morally questionable, but on top of that, the fact that they represent for a lot of people a cheat code or an easy gateway to becoming what a lot of people spend a lot of time being, and that's an OG or a collector in this game, I certainly understand why there is a ton of discourse around it. At the end of the day, it all comes down to the lens at which you look at sneaker culture, and I think rep versus retail, the people who look at it from one lens or the other strictly are just coming at it from a different place, and it's very difficult to find middle ground. I'm sure there are more sneaker debates that rage all the time, but these are 3 that came to mind as I was planning this video and as I was putting together last week's video. Let me know down in the comments, what are some sneaker debates that you think will never be resolved? And for you, of the ones that I talked about, are they resolved for you? Or do you feel strongly one way or the other? I hope this finds everybody well. I hope this finds everybody safe, and I'll see you in the next video.